Believe it or not, a 30-second TV ad featuring a former president has kicked off a trade dispute that could actually make your next car, your groceries, and even your home renovation more expensive. So today, we're going to break down exactly how we got here, and more importantly, what it means for your wallet.
It sounds almost like a riddle, doesn't it? But this is very real. The price of your next car could genuinely jump by 10%, all because of a single TV commercial. And look, this isn't just some abstract political headline. It's a real-world economic event, and we are going to unpack exactly how this happened. What we're seeing is way more than just a little disagreement between politicians. This is a full-blown trade showdown with one of America's closest allies. We're going to follow the money here and see how a decision made in a social media post could end up having a direct impact on your budget. So, how in the world did this all begin? Well, it didn't start in some fancy boardroom or a stuffy government office. Nope. It all started during a commercial break with the voice of a president from a totally different era. This quote right here, this is the spark that lit the whole fire. The government of Ontario, Canada, actually dug up this line from a 1988 speech by Ronald Reagan and built an entire TV ad around it. The message couldn't have been clearer. They were using Reagan's own words to argue against protectionism, which, is basically just a fancy term for using taxes or tariffs to make imported goods more expensive. And this wasn't just some random ad they threw on late at night. Oh no. They spent $2 million to air it during Game 7 of the World Series, and they specifically targeted viewers in key industrial states like Michigan and Wisconsin. This was a really calculated move, designed to get as much attention as possible. And boy, did it work. The response was immediate and incredibly harsh. President Trump called it a fraudulent attack, and then, in a single social media post, he just terminated all trade negotiations with Canada and announced a new tariff, just like that. In a matter of hours, the entire trade relationship with a key ally was completely thrown into chaos. Okay, so this is where the story gets really interesting and takes a bit of a surprising turn. Because while all these tensions with Canada were hitting a boiling point, the trade relationship with another major power, China, was actually moving in the complete opposite direction. The contrast is pretty stark when you lay it out like this. With Canada, a close ally, the path is escalation. Talks are off, new tariffs are on. But with China, a strategic rival, it's all about de-escalation. A summit is in the works, and major tariffs were actually avoided. It really makes you wonder about the strategy at play here, with two very different approaches happening at the very same time. So, what do these new tariffs against Canada actually mean in real terms? Let's put some numbers to this. The tax on general imports, and this includes cars and car parts, jumps fivefold, going from 2.5% all the way to 12.5%. Tariffs on steel and aluminum, which were already super high at 50%, get pushed even higher to 60%. And you can see costs for lumber and agricultural products are also set to rise sharply. These are huge increases that are absolutely going to be felt across multiple industries. Now, these tariffs aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They create very real economic ripples that travel all the way from Wall Street to Main Street. So let's take a look at the impact on businesses, on investments, and ultimately on the prices you and I pay every day. To see how this plays out in the real world, let's just zoom in on one company, Deere & Company, the makers of those iconic green tractors. Deere is what's known as a bellwether, which means its financial health is a really good indicator of how the entire agricultural sector is doing. And that's a sector that relies heavily on trade with Canada. Right after the tariff announcement, Deere came out and projected the financial damage for the next year. And the number was staggering, $600 million. This isn't some hypothetical risk. We're talking about a concrete, massive financial hit to a major American company. Wall Street's reaction? It was instant. In just one day of trading, Deere's stock plunged 4.2%. That drop erased billions of dollars in market value. It's just a crystal clear example of how quickly trade policy can shake investor confidence. But this isn't just a story about big corporations and investors. This is where it really hits home for a lot of us. Projections show that the price of a new car that has Canadian components could go up by as much as 10%. Your new washing machine could jump by 12%. And the cost of lumber for that home renovation project, it could increase by up to 8%. And all of those individual price hikes, well, they add up. They can contribute to broader inflation. According to JP Morgan, border states like New York and Michigan could see an inflation spike of up to 2.3%,
purely as a direct result of these tariffs. That's a real, tangible increase in the cost of living for millions of people. All right, so with all this uncertainty floating around, what can you actually do to prepare? We've put together some practical tips here, based on expert analysis, for how to navigate this potential economic turbulence. So for us as consumers, the big takeaway here is to plan ahead. If you're thinking about a home renovation, you might want to get it done before lumber prices shoot up. If a new car is in your future, it is definitely worth researching which models have the fewest Canadian-made parts. And hey, if you're thinking of a trip up to Canada, booking that flight sooner rather than later could save you some real money on airfare. Now, if you're a business owner or an investor, the game is all about managing risk, and that means doing things like auditing your supply chain to see how exposed you are to Canadian goods and maybe exploring alternative suppliers. It also means staying plugged in through trade associations. And for investors, diversifying your portfolio can really help shield you from the volatility in the sectors that are going to be hit hardest by these tariffs. You know, this whole episode is just such a powerful reminder of how incredibly fast the global trade landscape can change. It all boils down to a fundamental question. When a political storm like this hits, who is ultimately responsible for holding the umbrella and who gets left out in the rain?